as a big surprise to many people, but what I have been reporting all along is that Disney was very, very hopeful to bring back Jimmy Kimmel, and that this was in no way a cancellation, or this was in no way him being fired, as some politicians have suggested. When they took him off the air last week on Wednesday, as I had heard from my sources all along, this was because they wanted to diffuse the situation, that Jimmy Kimmel wanted to come on air on Wednesday night last week with a monologue that I was told took aim at MAGA, and that Disney felt would not have helped the situation. And if you look at Disney's statement, they actually do refer to that a bit. They say, quote, "Last Wednesday, we made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It is a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday." So that is the statement on behalf of the Walt Disney Company that I received. And you see there that they are condemning some of the statements that he made. They are addressing that they understand that this is a tense time in the country. But what I have been told from my sources is that the situation between Kimmel and Disney never got overly tense, that it was actually quite cordial, and that from day one that they always wanted to figure out a path to be able to bring the show back. And now they are doing that. Tomorrow night, Jimmy Kimmel Live will be back on the air.
And Elizabeth, it's still an open question whether some of the broadcast stations that initially threatened to preempt his show will be carrying it. Do we have any reaction so far from Nexstar and Sinclair?
We do not yet. This, statement from the Walt Disney Company coming in the last 30 minutes, so we do not know if they are going to carry the show tomorrow night, later in this week, but what we do know based on Disney is that they are airing the show regardless. So even if Jimmy's show is being aired in less stations than it typically is, all of the country may not be able to see his show tomorrow night when he returns, but they are still committed to airing this show. So Disney now, yes, condemning some of the statements that Jimmy made, yes, acknowledging that much of the country was perhaps offended by the statements that he made, but also really standing by Jimmy. And I do want to note that we have seen protests all throughout Hollywood, both in Los Angeles and in New York at Disney's offices, here in Hollywood where Jimmy Kimmel Live shoots his show. Today there was a protest. So the Hollywood community has very much been standing with Jimmy. They have wanted him to come back. And just a few hours ago, I reported on 400 celebrities, including everyone from Meryl Streep to Jennifer Aniston, who signed an open letter from the ACLU, not attacking Disney in any way, not even addressing Disney or ABC, but attacking any censorship and any silencing from the government, saying that this is a moment that is bigger than our industry. Once you silence an entertainer, once you silence a journalist, then you silence everyone, and it will be a snowball effect. So you have to imagine that what went into Disney's decision was also, quite frankly, the creative partner that they have to work with. If you have the entire Hollywood community who is rallying behind Jimmy, well, that is something that they had to consider. But again, I go back to what my sources have told me from the first moment that his show was preempted from the air, which is this was never a cancellation. They always wanted to find a path forward. They just knew that they had to take the temperature down in a moment where they had very real threats from stationery and also very real threats from the President of the United States.
And Brian Stelter's still with us here. It'll be really interesting to see. So much we don't know here, Brian, which is what is Jimmy Kimmel going to say tomorrow night? Who might his guests be? I mean, this is going to be illuminating about how he will handle his return.
And how much he wants to make this bigger than just one show or just one comedian, right? Because certainly many in Hollywood believe this is a big test about free speech in the United States that's much bigger than Kimmel's show. So whether he really wants to embrace that or not, that'll be telling. Disney stock, by the way, popped as soon as this headline crossed earlier this hour. The stock's generally been down today, but you can see the chart perhaps on screen, a sudden spike upward when this news broke. That just speaks to how big this was becoming for Disney as a corporation. And it's telling that the statement about this, it did not come from Jimmy Kimmel's publicist at ABC. It came from Disney as a company. It came from Bob Iger's office.
Yay.
He's the CEO of Disney. He was
Yay, Bob.
about this, and certainly had to deal with this personally and directly.
Terry Moran is back with us. Terry, as an ABC veteran, I wonder what you make of this news, given the pressure that Bob Iger was under.
He's under tremendous pressure. I know that he and Jimmy Kimmel are close, so they were discussing this cordially. And then I think he has a sense of where this story is going, that because the Hollywood community, which is obviously essential to Disney's business, was strongly against taking Kimmel off the air, and because that sense that the country doesn't want to pick off comedians one by one. There are people in MAGA wants to. The president wants to pick off anybody who he disagrees with or who's mean to him, but we're still Americans. And I think it's bad for business to go against that.
What are you looking for tomorrow night in what is such a critical moment when it comes to free speech and how the president approaches that? You've written a lot about that. What are you looking for?
Well, first I'll look for how many stations are taking the Kimmel show. That'll show if the battle is still going or if, in fact, this is a step beyond that moment. And then I'll also look for what he says. That's what we're all going to look for. How tough is he on what happened to him? How open is he to reaching out to the people who found what he said divisive or hurtful? It's going to be a moment.
Yeah, no question, a huge moment in American history. It's notable given the uncertainty surrounding where this was all headed. It wasn't clear.
No,
Now
he
it seems
didn't.
like Jimmy Kimmel, again, the
He really
breaking
didn't.
news, is going to return to the air tomorrow night. ABC putting out a statement that they have decided, after thoughtful conversations, to return the show on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they do
Yay.
obviously have some issues with what he said, that they had suspended him initially indefinitely, characterized by some of those who were very gleeful at Jimmy Kimmel's suspension as a firing, but it is not in this case. They are saying that they did the suspension because, quote, they felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive, and they've been spending the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations we reached the decision to return to the show on Tuesday.
Yeah. Thank you to Terry Moran, Brian Stelter, Elizabeth Wagmeister. We're going to continue following this major breaking story. Jimmy Kimmel returning to the air tomorrow night. Stay with CNN. The Arena with Casey Hunt continues after a quick break.
That helps a lot.
Yeah.
This is the right thing.
Hey, let's see what the other stations are reporting, folks, about this news. I'll put this on silent for just a second, but it's huge. I saw, I think it was Keith Olbermann said that this was going to happen yesterday, and he was right. He made a vlog about it, reporting it. Just saw the headline that he wrote, but I didn't hear what he said because I was in the middle of something else. But let's see what MSNBC is saying about this, folks, before we go back, because CNN is on commercial. So let's see if in Deadline White House they've made any comment about this. Here, perfect.
The suspending indefinitely of Jimmy Kimmel immediately after the chairman of the FCC's aggressive yet hollow threats is another example of out of control intimidation. Maybe the Constitution should have said, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, except in one's political and financial self-interest. By the way, for the record, this ex-CEO finds Jimmy Kimmel very talented and funny. I don't know either of these men, but I'm told, Dominic, that that there are not enough room in a room for both of their shadows. What impact did that have?
Well, look, I will say this, Nicole. First of all, I would like to get you a cup of tea. I'm sorry I can't. Secondly, I'd like to say, look, The Walt Disney Company does have a history of ex-CEOs sniping each other, and certainly Michael Eisner, when he was pushed aside for Bob Iger back in the early 2000s, wasn't too happy. But the two of them are quite close, so this was a real shock. When we wrote this story after this tweet came out, the reaction was very strong. Again, some people called it the tipping point that might tip it over. Was it or not, we don't know, but a weekend came in between, and now we have a deal. But it certainly was a harsh spotlight from one well-respected individual in Hollywood still on his successor, and that must have really stung over in Burbank.
Tim Miller, let me show you what the public saw, in the immediate aftermath before people could convene meetings on high floors of fancy buildings. The American people heard this from some of the country's most beloved voices in comedy. This is Seth Meyers and Stephen Colbert and David Letterman.
We must all stand up for the principles of free expression. There's a reason free speech is in the very First Amendment. It stands above all others.
With an autocrat, you cannot give an inch. And if ABC thinks... If ABC thinks that this is going to satisfy the regime, they are woefully naive.
You can't go around firing somebody because you're fearful or trying to suck up to an authoritarian criminal administration in the Oval Office. That's just not how this works.
That's right, yeah.
Your first reaction.
Hey, folks, I'll read your comments after this.
Well,
Thank you.
is good, and finally, we've seen this from a corporate leader who has been targeted by this administration, who has done the thing that we've suggested on this program a lot, that John Oliver put so succinctly on his show, which is administration F you make me. And that was the most frustrating thing about this thing from the start, right? Was, this is a threat to the First Amendment. This is Donald Trump, trying to bully and intimidate and silence people. But he was able to do it in kind of his way, where he just sends out bleats and he just intimidates people and he just says nasty things about people and he makes veiled threats. And he hopes that people will just fold to his wishes. And way too many people this year, way too many prominent organizations and institutions have just folded to his pressure campaign. And, throughout all of this, we've said, well, we don't exactly know how far he will go. We know how extreme his rhetoric is. But we also know about Donald Trump that he is tacoed a lot. He's chickened out a lot when the heat gets turned up. And so rather than just fold and say, hey, we want to grant you all of your authoritarian wishes, and we're going to fire people to criticize you, and we're going to give you pro bono legal services, and on, why don't these institutions say, okay, you want to come after us? You want FCC Chairman Brendan Carter to come after us? Do it. Let's go to court. We'll see you in court. You want the Department of Justice to go after your political foes? Find a grand jury. Find a grand jury that will support your allegations, right? And if you start doing that, then this administration, I think, is going to be slowed down quite a bit in their authoritarian aspirations. Then you can see that maybe the pro-democracy side can get some wins under their belt. And I think that, to me, that is the big message of this, which was, the main issue, as serious as the threats to the First Amendment from the administration was, the main issue in this particular case was just how easily people were folding, right? That they did this, they silenced Jimmy Kimmel without any actual tangible threats to them, at least at the Disney level. That might be different when we get down to the affiliate level.
The first page of the first chapter of Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny is about obeying in advance. And the first thing that universities and law firms and media companies have done is to, in advance, obey. And that has happened while batting 1,000 in the courts. So a lot of the elites who say, well, I'm not that worried, I'm going to go ahead and renovate my Hamptons house. They do that because they believe the courts are holding, but they're not willing to put their own skin in the game and use the courts. The law firms that have fought Trump's executive orders have all won. Not a single one of them has lost. And none of the media companies that paid huge sums to Donald Trump took those cases to court. So I wonder what you make of this moment.
Well, I think it's a good moment. I think it shows people that if you fight back, you can win. There's some basic things that people should remember. It's not a mystery anymore who Donald Trump is or what he wants. He wants everything, and he will take everything if you let him take everything. Appeasement and surrender do not work. If someone uses their power to come after universities or religious institutions or critics, or they go after the press, or they go after law firms, or they go after banning books, the one common theme there is that they're taking your freedom away. And everybody in the country knows that freedom isn't free. It requires sacrifice. Sacrifice means it's going to hurt. And I have been just really troubled by how many business leaders, university presidents, senior partners in law firms that are making $1 billion have bent the knee to the idea that is antithetical to what America is. So I knew Bob Iger. I was shocked, actually, that he leaned into taking Jimmy Kimmel off there, and I'm thankful that he put him back. But I think that he did really kind of drive a wedge through people's trust about whether institutions will hold. And I think Tim is exactly right, that when you push back, you can win. If you don't, Donald Trump is not going to stop. The man does not have a conscience. I think he's demonstrated that time and time again. You saw him the other day at Kirk's funeral, where after his wife said, I am going to, forgive the killer, which was an unbelievably powerful moment, Donald Trump, instead of saying, I actually represent the entire country, we're going close to the edge, let me exercise some self-discipline and some empathy and pull back from this, basically said, no, I actually disagree with Charlie Kirk. I hate my enemies. And then he ordered Pam Bondi to go after all of his political enemies. I'm reminded in the late night space of when you think about Lenny Bruce, and you think about George Carlin, and you think about the thing that makes America great is our ability to redress our grievances against the government. That's in the Constitution.
Right.
It's there because if the government is not accountable to the people, if you can't listen to dissent, then you can't become that more perfect union. And I think today, if it doesn't show anybody anything else, when people push back, when we gather together, we can win. Because the thing that's standing between autocracy is the American people. That is the only thing that's left, because some of the leaders are not showing up, and shame on them for it. But if they go read the letter from Birmingham from Dr. King, maybe they'll kind of rethink their unwillingness to stand up for the things that actually make America important and strong.
Dominic, one of the things that seems to have surfaced is that people in Hollywood are scared. They're scared to speak out, and that there have been...
Folks, hey, let's see what Fox News is saying about this, just for grins, folks. One moment, please. And get a little variety going here, as it were. Here's Kudlow. Right here, all right.
He and Van Jones were going at it. I don't know this guy, Van Jones, but I guess he's a big left-wing guy. He was going at it, and one of the last things that happened was in Charlie's life that he said, please, let's have a good conversation about this. Free speech is a very important part of this. Not that many people mention free speech, but free speech is a free, respectable, civil speech, Rich. I mean, that is a big part of this story as well.
Huge. Just to come back to Eric for just a moment, there's no way you can stand there, say that, feel that, without the grace of God, right? There's no way without the grace of God. And the people in that arena are often stereotyped and smeared as haters and exclusionary.
Right.
They're standing and giving a standing ovation and weeping at a widow for giving the murderer of her husband, right? What else do you need to know?
Yeah, he's right. He is.
It's a very bright.
Oh, gosh.
Right.
And how about the insufferable Will
About the
King?
First Amendment from anyone who said nothing when Roseanne's top-rated show was pulled
Oh,
off
Clay
the air
Travis.
7 years ago. From people who said nothing when Gina Carano's show was pulled off of Disney Plus because people didn't like their social media postings. I didn't hear a single person on the left. I didn't hear a single person in Hollywood speak out. They all cheered it, in fact. I would say this
Okay, I lost a lot of viewers when I went to Clay Travis. All right, so let's go back to let's go back to CNN, folks. I don't blame you, everybody.
Democrat, Republican, or an independent. But I will
Don't
share
blame
the
you.
idea that I put out there that I shared with Jimmy himself. I think Jimmy Kimmel should come back on Tuesday. I think he should say that the phrase that he used to try to discuss Charlie Kirk was ill.
There we go. Okay.
This is a business story, and how Disney came to the conclusion to turn around, and whether or not that was due to political pressure or whether or not it was a purely sort of like financial decision they saw. I think the reporting will bear that out. Here's what is important to note. When Jimmy Kimmel was pulled off the air, for people on the left, it was like, it was a real watershed moment. There was a real,
Oh no, that's
it
not
felt
Brian
like
Selter.
there were all these data
But thanks for
points,
the comment.
when I was talking to sources on the left that had been building throughout Trump's term in
There are
this space,
commenters writing on
the
this live
freedom of
stream.
speech space, in the democracy space, and that for some reason this shook Democrats to the core as a galvanizing moment. And I think you see that that was received by the company clearly in what we're seeing here. On the right, I think that you saw what Brendan Carr was trying to accomplish. You saw it backfire with his own party, right? Ted Cruz coming out and saying he should have no involvement in this. Nobody was out there on the right defending Jimmy Kimmel or saying his comments were tonally appropriate. But they were saying this is not a place for government to get involved in. So Donald Trump's coalition was starting to split on this, and the Democrats were wholly unified in real concern. So it left sort of Disney on an odd island that I think they're trying to course correct now.
All right, thank you all so much. We're going to continue the conversation right after a quick break.
Okay, so they're
Tony, I
they
love your
are.
sense of urgency.
Hold on a second, folks.
So across background.
So they're on break, and I'm going to go and see what was written on social media, starting with Jimmy Kimmel's own Instagram page, and we'll wrap it up for now. There is a lot to dig out from this, to say the least. But if there's a lesson to be taken from this immediately, is that democracy is not dead in America. How many times have we heard that, right? Democracy is dead. No, democracy is not dead. Brian Kilmeade, that's the guy. Yeah, Brian Kilmeade. He's in. Yeah, I saw when Brian Kilmeade came on, the viewership dropped. People left. They're like, I don't want to see that guy. Which means Fox itself can't be having the rating success it once had before, right? Anyway, hold on a second. Let me find Jimmy Kimmel's page here. Instagram, and then Jimmy Kimmel. There it is. All I have to do is go in and double click there. See if there's any comments. Yep. Thank you all. Hey, thumbs ups are much appreciated, folks, for this. Thank you so much. We also have a membership organization too. Well, membership club. It's not an organization in and of itself. But anyway, okay. Let's see what Jimmy Kimmel has written, if anything, or see what people have. Sometimes people write on your news, write news on your post, even if you haven't posted on it, right? So that's where I'm going right now, and I'm waiting for the. Okay, so there's nothing new. Well, there is something interesting new here. Here's what we got. All right, this is his site as it comes into relief, and one thing is he's got Jimmy Kimmel's written. He said instead of the angry finger pointing here, can't we just for one day agree that it is horrible and monstrous to shoot another human? On behalf of my family, we send love to the Kirks for all the children, parents, and innocents who fall victim to senseless gun violence. And so that was September 10th. Now, there have been the latest post on Jimmy Kimmel's Instagram is this one. I'm going back to waiting for my page to refresh here. This one with Seth Meyers, and I believe that's slow to open there, but it will open. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, you're right. John Oliver, Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy Fallon. But nothing new. It says, which member of Strike Force 5 is on the show tonight? So it'll be interesting to see if he invites all of these gentlemen on tomorrow night for his return. That would be huge to have John Oliver, Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, and Jimmy Fallon on Jimmy Kimmel's show. So that could happen, right? That could happen, folks. We don't know. That could happen. Again, what this was posted a week ago was Jimmy Kimmel himself. Which member of Strike Force 5 is on the show tonight? Hint, he has an accent. That was John Oliver. Mark Ruffalo says, our leaders should be fearless. And so, yeah, nothing more recent than this. So nothing recent here yet, folks. And now I'll read the comments that you all are kind enough to leave on the video. Thank you very much right now. Excuse me. They are research before I post. Disney lost almost $4 billion. Oh, there's a claim here. Interesting that Disney lost almost, get this, $4 billion. $4 billion from not showing Jimmy Kimmel. $4 billion. That's why money talks. I told everybody. I told you. Jimmy Kimmel is worth billions. Disney lost $4 billion from this action. Their stock was plummeting. Yes. The line from Spike Lee's great new movies, from the highest to the lowest, was a great line in there uttered by the antagonist saying, attention is the new currency of today, right? This proves it. Attention is the new currency of today, folks. That's $4 billion. Billion with a B. Billion with a B. Billion. Disney lost $4 billion from this. You said, research this. I will research it to confirm. But look, it's logical. Absolutely logical that would happen, okay? Completely 100%. Oh, and here's CNN talking more about this. Hold on a second.
I think the death knell for mass media. I think what this shows is that you cannot anymore try and service a wide audience. Our country is simply too divided, and people are going to different places to consume different media. And so Jimmy Kimmel, and the people that like Jimmy Kimmel and watch Jimmy Kimmel, we know that they're majority Democrats. There might be some Republicans there might be some independents, but a lot of them are Democrats.
They're also young.
And so they're going to be mad if you take Jimmy Kimmel off the air. Taking Jimmy Kimmel off the air isn't going to get you Republicans. They're not going to come over and suddenly say, hey, we're going to watch Jimmy Kimmel. And so I think there's a bigger conversation to be had at this moment about what we think about when we think about mass media.
No, well, I'm going to stop her right there.
I'm really trying to.
I'm going to stop her right here. Okay, here's where she's completely wrong. The reason why Disney took its action is it was not only was that we're losing $4 billion, that comes from the key viewing demographic that's 18 to 34. Look, I'm 63, but a majority of you are between the ages of 18 and 45 who watch my channel, all right? That has been the case. My average viewer has always been 20 years younger than me, if not more so. That's the story. So what's going on is Disney sees that demographic going away, and they're like, oh my God, we got to get this guy back on. All right, so just letting you know how that works. She's wrong. It's not a Democratic Republican thing. You know, that's ridiculous. It's a demographic money thing. All right, that's what it's about. Here we go.
On the depths of my profound indifference for Jimmy Kimmel's career here. But to your point on the echo chambers, that's very real. And this was what got Jimmy Kimmel in this problem in the first place. He was reiterating a lie, and it is a lie, that the assassin of Charlie Kirk was motivated by right-of-center beliefs. 1 in 3 Democrats believe that.
I don't know if that's actually what he was saying.
No, that's
I don't think
That's not what he was saying. That's not what he was saying.
For political points.
But by saying it was anyone other than what it was. And again, if that was occurring in a vacuum, if you didn't have Democratic elected officials repeating that same lie, if you didn't have 1 in 3 Democrats believing that same lie, I do not think this would have that salience. And that is the problem with the echo chambers, is all of a sudden you find anything to blame everybody outside of your network. Right? I do not remember the last time on any of the broadcast late night shows there was a Republican elected representative. They go on Bill Maher, But for the Democratic elected officials, it's a rite of passage. That's why they're wearing the baseball
But caps. maybe they're not getting in, I mean, they might be invited, but they don't come. I mean, there's something to be said for that too, as someone who runs a podcast. You know, you can extend invitations, and sometimes, you know, they want to service their base.
And I think we're getting really and I want to hear what you have to say, Ashley, but I also just want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture here and the timeline of events, because you had the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, come on this podcast and say, you know, you can do this the easy way or the hard way when it comes to pulling Jimmy Kimmel's show. And then you saw this domino effect. Nexstar and Sinclair pull the show. Disney announcing it. We actually have the sound from Carr, so let's listen to that and talk on the other end of it.
License granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct and take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, you know, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
So just on the larger issue of free speech, are you comfortable with how this played out?
I don't like jawboning. I don't like that the FCC has these powers. No, my problem
They don't.
is I would love to see a
They
Democrat
don't.
stand up and say, yes, the government shouldn't have
This
these powers.
guy's an
It's just
idiot.
saying
They
the
don't
FCC
have those
let's
powers.
do
Wait, hold
something
on a
about these
second.
broadcast monopolies.
Wait, hold a second, folks. This guy's an idiot. The FCC does not have that power. All you have to do is read the Federal Communications Act of 1934. It doesn't mention we can yank you off the air at any point. In fact, if you go there and then type censorship, it tells you it is not supposed to censor. This guy's an idiot. Don't listen to him. Sorry, just have to put that in there. Back to the show. Ugh.
But instead it's, okay, we hate this when the other side is doing it, but we're taking notes and we're back in charge. We'll be able to use those same levers.
I think that there are a couple things that happen. One, there's the public interest argument, and it's like, who gets to determine what the public interest actually is? And I didn't really hear that discussed a lot when this was. The public interest is free speech, in my opinion, and his comments about the hard way or not, that did not indicate that the public interest was actually at the forefront of his mind, but it was a political win. And I think that's actually why you did see some Republicans, whether there were Republicans that went on Jimmy Kimmel or not, said, well, this might be a bridge too far. I think there's also an assumption of his viewership. I agree that, like, the mass media might be over, perhaps, I don't know, but there's a lot of people that are just laying in bed watching Jimmy Kimmel, whether they're really paying attention to it or not. And some of them are Republicans and some of them are Democrats. And they may be watching and disagreeing with everything he says, but that is something that actually is a part of this adrenaline, dopamine hit is in mass media right now, is why we swipe so much, is like, you actually need a charge of something. But last week when this happened, all of my Republican friends on this network told me this was a business decision. This happened because Sinclair affiliates were saying that their folks did not want to watch Jimmy Kimmel. Well, I was reading reports this weekend that Disney lost $4 billion, whether it was in shares, whether it was because there was an effort by folks on the left to get people to cancel their subscription. And I would argue perhaps Disney also saw that as a business decision, and that they might have the pendulum might have swung too far. Presidents should not determine what people are saying and what people are not saying, but voters get to determine how they spend their dollars, how they select their subscriptions, and what they watch. And I think that this was a win for the left, and the voters spoke.
Lose tens of millions in show production costs, net revenue, or billions in market share. I mean, it ends up being a decision.
It is, and they made the decision that they would rather have Jimmy Kimmel on than not.
All right, everyone stand by. We're waiting for this big announcement at the White House on autism. We're going to be right back. Stay with us.
Okay, so you know what they're thinking during the announcement? They're thinking that they're going to ask Trump about what he thinks about Jimmy Kimmel being back on the air. So there's that. Also, I turned the computer back on. I had to restart it because it had a lot of pages open. And where I'm going to now is the video with your comments, to read your comments while we have you here. And I want to thank you all again for taking time to visit Zenny62 and share your thoughts on this really very important subject. I disagree this is like a win for the left. I think it's a win for America. because people, regardless of where they sit on any political spectrum, should have the right to express their views. Uh, you know, as stupid as they might be at times. But that's the way it is. That's our society, right? That's great, and it's what makes it fun. You know, I remember when I was at Texas Arlington, I had a friend. I graduated from UTA in 1985, then went to Cal that fall for city planning grad school. But from 84 to 85, a friend of mine, I would play pool at a place called the Dry Gulch. We were students, but going all that. And he said to me in 84 that he thought apartheid was a good idea. And now you would say, what did he look like? This white guy, his mustache, very nice guy, great wife, a young student from Texas. And I said, well, let's talk about this. And make a very long story very short, okay? I talked to him about it every time we played pool, and the last time I ran the table on him. That was in 85 before I left. And we were good friends. We talked about a lot of things. We hung out. Those are the days before the internet when talking face-to-face was normal and you could understand somebody and they would listen to you. He said to me, look, I want to thank you for taking time to talk with me because I now agree and understand how bad apartheid is. But I want to thank you for just listening. I never forgot that, okay? And in this internet age, it's more important than ever for people to listen to each other, to just listen, So let me get to, speaking of listening, let me read your comments right here. I want to thank, first of all, Canuck Tunes. He says, I'm 55, I don't have kids. You okay? Okay. Are you okay? Okay. 55, I don't have kids. He says, all right. And I have hard copies of my Lucasfilm, 20th Century Fox, Pixel, and Marvel films, and I'm fine with the 4G updating I think he says, 4K. Then he says, if they had the ability, the Paul Pelosi jokes on Fox News would have resulted in firings. That's true. In 2022. Yeah, that's a very good point. Dream Life says, yes, win for America. Dream for Life. Yes, 100% correct. And then below, there's more. I say there's more, folks, right? See here. I think there's more. Oh, nope, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Oh, no, there's more. Then Brian, he says, Brian Kimmel that. Well, here it is. I hope. Let me go right here. I did research it. Sorry I worded that wrong. I researched before post. Then I hope ABC promotes the streaming options to bypass those stupid distributors. That's a good idea. Then research before I post. Disney lost almost $4 billion since Jimmy Kimmel's cancellation. His stock lost 3.59 a share, down 3.1 points. That is wild. Folks, that's the power of digital media today. That's the power that Jimmy Kimmel has amassed just from people watching him. Brian Kilmade, that's the guy's name. Yeah, Brian something. Says, yeah. Canuck Tune says they're still working on spin at Fox News. And I said something about this okie dokie. Yeah, I was talking about how they have the insufferable Clay Aiken on. He said okie dokie. And this would be a funny skit. Yeah. He says, if I were Matt Damon, I'd be the first guest and would sing Not Ready to Make Nice by the Chicks. Jimmy Kimmel could then insult him for playing it badly, making him run off the stage. That's pretty funny. Canuck Tune says Jewel and other artists have canceled as well. Yeah, I think somebody pointed that out. And there's one up here. What is this? We've got Jamie Raskin on, so I'm going to turn to him real quick. It says, right here. Yeah, right here. Canadian here. I canceled my Disney yesterday, and Sarah McLachlan canceled her performance promoting her Lilith Fair documentary a few hours back because it's distributed by Disney. Okay, so those are the comments. And I want to thank you all for making those comments. And here is Jimmy Raskin on with Pamela Brown on CNN.
Country moving into a posture where the President of the United States identifies people that he wants federal prosecutors to indict. That's not how our criminal justice system works. I mean, there are U.S. attorneys like the one in the Eastern District of Virginia who are being forced out of their jobs right now simply because they're saying, no, there's not enough probable cause to bring a case that the president wants them to bring. And these are Republicans who are being forced out. So that's an outrageous violation of due process, and it's also a violation of the First Amendment, because what it's saying is the president will use the apparatus of criminal justice enforcement in America to attack people in a vindictive way with selective prosecutions simply because the president doesn't like them.
Is the president breaking any laws by directing Pam Bondi to prosecute his perceived enemies?
Well, he's completely sabotaging any prosecution that might actually result, because it's very clear it is a vindictive prosecution, it is a selective prosecution, and it's not based on probable cause, especially if he has to oust a U.S. attorney, as with Mr. Sievert in Virginia, because that person says there is not enough probable cause. Then he installs someone in their place, and then suddenly they find probable cause. But I mean, we've seen this like with Mayor Adams in New York. Mayor Adams actually had a grand jury indictment against him for bribery and corruption offenses, and then President Trump forced the Department of Justice to rewind the whole process to get that revoked. So he wants to decide who will be prosecuted and who will not be prosecuted, and it's all based on his political loyalties and his political friendships.
All right, I also want to ask you about this new reporting from MSNBC and the New York Times about how Tom Homan, now the president's border czar, was recorded last year accepting a bag with $50,000 in cash by undercover FBI agents. The Trump Justice Department later closed that investigation. Homan denies any wrongdoing, and a White House spokesman called the case, quote, a blatantly political investigation, and that the Biden administration was using its resources to target President Trump's allies rather than investigate real criminals and the millions of illegal aliens who flooded our country. What is your response to this report and the White House's statement there?
I mean, the administration cover-up of this is just pathetic. This is a situation where the Department of Justice was investigating someone else, and then someone came forward and said, you know that this guy, Tom Homan, is engaged in acts of bribery. So then they set up FBI agents to go in to pose as corrupt businessmen, and he was willing to accept a bag of cash, a kava bag of $50,000 in return for promising to give them business once Trump was elected president. So apparently they had videotape and audio tape covering this, and they didn't bring a prosecution then because he wasn't a government official at the time, and so they wanted to wait until he was a government official to see if he would actually deliver on the promised contracts. And then the Department of Justice and FBI under Trump, under Bondi and Patel, decided just to quash the whole indictment, quash the whole investigation and not indict him for these offenses. And that, again, is an utterly political deployment of the law enforcement system of the United States.
Well, then DOJ has made it clear it's not going to pursue this any further, but you're part of the House Judiciary Committee, which oversees the DOJ and DHS. What can Democrats on the committee do here to try to hear or see those tapes that you just mentioned?
Well, I hope it's not just Democrats. I hope it's Democrats and Republicans together saying, if we've got people who are purporting to sell government contracts before they get into office and accepting $50,000 in cold cash in a kava bag, that all of us want the truth to come out about that. So we want that videotape, if it exists, and that audio tape, if it exists, and apparently they do, we want those released to the public. If there's no crime and they really think that the whole thing should be quashed, then they should not be afraid of showing that to the public. But a lot of us smell a rat here and believe that this is an attempt to cover up for yet another criminal offense associated with somebody in the Trump administration.
Very quickly, have you talked to your Republican counterparts about issuing a subpoena for that tape?
Well, this came out since we left, so I've not spoken directly to any of them about it. I've certainly spoken to Democratic colleagues about it who are absolutely outraged that somebody could get away with taking cash bribes for government contracts, and that
That's
the FBI
jailable.
director would think there's no problem with that.
That's a jailable
So
offense.
we would like all of the information released to the public so the American people can decide.
Congressman Jimmy Raskin, thank you so much.
Hey, folks, real quick. That is a jailable offense. Rod Blagojevich, the former governor of Illinois who I had the pleasure of interviewing at the 2008 Democratic National Convention, later was imprisoned for trying to sell the Senate seat once held by Barack Obama. So you can go to jail for that and should. Under those standards, Tom should have been put in jail for a bit of time.
You bet.
And we have some live pictures here from the White House. We were standing by for an announcement from President Trump on autism. Let me bring back in CNN medical correspondent Meg Terrell. Meg, what do we expect to hear today, and how does that line up with the science?
Yeah, Pamela, we are expecting from multiple reports that the administration is going to talk about a link between the use of Tylenol or acetaminophen during pregnancy and autism. They also may separately talk about a drug called leucovorin, which is already approved essentially to mitigate this.
Okay, folks, that's going to go on for a while before he gets to talk about anything or anyone asks him about the Jimmy Kimmel issue, if they get a chance to do so. So I want to thank you all for watching and for commenting. And please subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube for more. Bookmark ZennyReport.com. And if you have any ideas for coverage, if you want to vlog with me or be a contributor, send a message, email me, Zenny at Zenny62media.com or Zenny at Zenny62media.net. Thank you so very much.